Thought Bubble Audio.
Look, up in the sky!
You will never find the more wretched hive of scum and villainy.
Welcome to Beer with Geeks with Tim and Frank.
Who are you?
I'm Batman.
I am Iron Man.
Your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man.
Hi, Christopher. I'm Nero.
My name is Inigo Montoya.
You're a wizard, Harry.
A couple of guys with a couple of beers and a whole lot of pop culture nostalgia.
Make it so, number one.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Beatles.
I named the dog Indiana.
Life finds a way.
I am serious. And don't call me Shirley.
Now sit back and crack open a cold one, because it's time for Beer with Geeks.
It comes in paints.
Shaken, not stirred.
Great Scott!
I was way off. I knew it started with an S, though.
Hi, and welcome to Beer with Geeks, where two geeks geek out with beer. I'm Tim, and with me, as always, is my man whose favorite Batman character is Leslie Tompkins, and that's Frank. How are you today?
Leslie Tompkins. Wow. Yeah. I was going to sit here and try to come up with a defense of like why that's my favorite Batman character, but I can't.
Because
Nothing
I
against.
think because the answers are obvious. I think it's because it's an obvious answer, Frank. I don't think you need to come up with a defense to it, right?
The best character, that's why. Anyway.
The best character. Anyway, moving on from that obvious statement. Anyway, Frank, how are you today?
I'm good. I'm a little tired. My brain's a little fried. This should be a good one. My brain's a little fried because I have been making my way down. Well, in the sun, yes. I spent the whole weekend in the sun, and then spent most of the day driving home from Maine to Massachusetts. So my brain's a little fried, but I'm happy to be here with you. It's good to see your face and hear your voice and be talking to all our friends about some great comic book stuff.
Indeed, Frank. Before we get into that great comic book stuff, could you please tell the audience what you're drinking? And also me, because I see the color, but I don't know what it's about.
It's Switchback season! Yeah! It's back in season, baby. Yes, I was drinking many a Switchback this weekend. Out on the dock, out by the lake, up in Maine, where we spend some of our time in the summers. And I love the hell out of that beer.
Switchback is great. I had a friend I used to work with who, anytime anybody went to that area before Switchback was available, he'd be like, "Bring me some Switchback. You bring it to me right now."
I used to be that guy, man. I used to be that guy. I have a friend who's from Vermont. They're brewed in Burlington, Vermont. That's where the brewery is. I have a friend who's from Vermont, a coworker, and whenever he'd go up there, I'd be like, "Hey, if you're going to be in the area anyway, if you don't mind, if you could pick me up some." But I love it. It's so like it's just a satisfying outdoor crisp like summer beer for me. It's one of my total favorites. It's not even the best that there is necessarily. I just really enjoy it.
Yep.
And I probably told this story at some point, but a couple of years ago, we did spend a weekend in Burlington, Vermont, and we were at the Switchback Brewery. We were the first ones there, like, when they opened that morning. It was Saturday morning or Sunday morning, and we were just, like, waiting outside for them to open, and we just came in, and it wasn't like there was a line or anything. We were just, like, they were opening at 12. We got there at, like, 11:59, and they were like, "Oh, yeah, come in." And we just sat there at the bar with no one else around, and just...
Oh, that sounds nice. It
was fun.
Nice.
Yeah, yeah. So that's my relationship with Switchback. What are you drinking?
I am drinking a beer I've never had before, and I am glad that I bought it because it is freaking delicious. It is a Time Traveler Blonde Lager from the Bay State Brewing Company, which is in Williamsburg, Massachusetts.
Time Traveler.
Yeah, it's very good. It's got a ram on the front of it crashing through a clock, which I always appreciate. I thought it was a goat because, today we were going to talk about the goat, Denny O'Neil.
That's right.
But it's okay. Doesn't matter. Rams are cool, too.
You might say he's ramming through the clock.
Yeah, that's probably what they were going for.
I don't know.
Yeah. Anyway, I'll read the side of the can because, I always like to read the side of the can.
Love
New
it.
World Classic. Bay State's Time Travel Blonde is a big, bright, golden malty lager. Strong but refreshing and easy drinking. It features substantial body, just a hint of sweetness, and balanced hop bitterness in the finish. And that is true. It is all those things. It's a 6.9 alcohol.
Wow.
So, for a lager, it's pretty packed.
Damn. Substantial body. That's what they've said about me in the past. So that I can relate.
Yeah, I know. I've been meaning to talk to you about that, Frank. Stop telling me what your doctor says about you.
Substantial Body was my band name in college.
It's actually a good band name. Yeah.
We are Substantial Body. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah.
Good stuff.
For sure.
Yeah, but anyway, as I alluded to, Frank, we're going to talk about the late great Denny O'Neil who passed away recently, and he is just like Denny O'Neil is would be on the Mount Rushmore of comic books.
Absolutely.
For his importance to the comic book industry. You've got Jack Kirby, you've got Stan Lee, and you've got Simon and Schuster, and you've got Denny O'Neil. I think he's that important. Not so much in that he created so many characters, that's not necessarily his thing, but he shepherded a whole generation of readers and really changed how the importance of comics and what those comics can do. And he's really just a stand-up guy from all accounts.
Really a really substantial body of work, you might say. Absolutely. Really shaped a lot of characters to be sort of what we know them today.
That's right. Yeah, still.
He took existing characters. He created a lot of characters too, but some of his best known work was when he took existing characters and told some of the most classic stories that are considered sort of the foundation of a lot of the definition of a lot of our favorite characters, like Batman, like Green Arrow, like Green Lantern. Mm-hmm. He's and countless others, but he was really, really influential.
And that was just when he was writing. That doesn't even count when he was editing books, right? He was the Batman editor for a long time. He's he's, as he liked to say, he's the guy that killed Robin.
That's right.
He had, because he was I think he was in a diner in the 80s, and he had a little Batman lapel on when he was editing the books on his jacket. And a guy asked him, hey, what do you do for a living? Why are you wearing that? And he's like, oh, I edit the Batman books. And he was like, this is the guy that killed Robin. That's, that, to be known for your work in comics is pretty rare, especially in the 80s. That was not exactly a thing,
Yeah.
So
totally.
For people to recognize you like that. So, Denny O'Neil, great guy. But in honor of Denny O'Neil, we read some Denny O'Neil comics. And so I don't know what you read, actually. I tried to vary my reading bouts.
Okay.
And some stuff I read before, I didn't, I figured you might have pick up some stuff, and I was like, ooh, Frank probably won't read this one, so I'll do this
okay
one.
Interesting. I had ambitions of reading a lot when I was away this weekend.
Yeah, I did too. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, I didn't read as much as I wanted to, but I did read. I read the original Ra's al Ghul story, Lazarus Pit, all that fun stuff.
Good.
And I read Hard Traveling Heroes,
yeah,
which I've always wanted to read that, and this was the excuse I needed to finally read it.
Let's start with Hard Traveling Heroes, actually. This is Green Lantern, Green Arrow. It was a Green Lantern book that Green Arrow came onto, and it was the conservative Green Lantern with the liberal Green Arrow, and Green Arrow was basically look at the injustice, because that was Denny O'Neil's thing, right? Look at the injustice.
Right.
We need to tell people about it. We need to fix it. He was a big activist, and he used comics as that platform to really try and help people as much as he could.
Yeah, that's right. And a lot of the stuff in that. Did you reread that recently, or had you read it before? Or
I've read it before. I did not read it this time because I had a feeling you were going to go for Green Lantern, Green Arrow, and so I said I'm going to do something. I'll do something different.
Okay, nice. I'm interested to hear that next. But I did read it, and I knew I would enjoy it. I knew the basic story. The basic story, and I knew some of the the most famous Green Arrow story ever probably is Speedy being a junkie, right? Like that's and that's part of that broader story arc. So I knew parts of it, but I didn't actually ever read it. And man, was it like applicable to what's happening in the world today.
It sure is Cotton. Yeah.
Yeah. It was really like the whole, at least in essence, it was, it's all about, here's Green Lantern and Green Arrow, and they're traveling across the country, and they make a pact that they're going to be as human as they're going to use their superpowers and their superhero accoutrement as little as possible. And
superhero accoutrement is the best way to describe a non-powered superhero.
Yes, I thought I'd make it fancy.
That's great.
But it's this great story of Green Arrow constantly pointing out to Green Lantern, who's like Green Lantern's the very buttoned up conservative one, and Green Arrow is constantly pointing out to him, look at the injustices, look at how authority and how the system are keeping people down in certain instances, and how we need to work to correct those injustices. And that just very much resonates with everything that's happening with the Black Lives Matter movement and Me Too and all these movements that are social movements that are taking hold right now in our world.
Let me ask you a question, because I can't remember if this is, I think this is the beginning of Hard Traveling Heroes, but this is the very famous issue where a black man goes up to Green Lantern and he's like, let me ask you, Mr. Green Lantern,
yes,
like, you helped the blue skins, the orange skins, the purple skins, why haven't you done anything about the black skins?
Yeah.
Like and he
that was the first or second issue. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. I thought so.
Yes.
That's very, very.
That
very
was when
famous.
It really struck me, like right at the beginning, like, oh wow, this is still applicable today. And then another one of those early issues, there is not even a reference, but there is a panel where the faces of Martin Luther King Jr. and Robert F. Kennedy are in there, and they're being held up as like martyrs for the cause. Because this was right at that time, 68, 69. So this was fresh in everyone's minds, and this was what the civil rights movement looked like. And there was a lot of turmoil, much like there is again today, and or still today.
Mm-hmm.
So
I want a new comic image of like Green Lantern, or Hal Jordan reading like White Fragility or Stamped from the Beginning or something.
Right?
Just
yeah.
like I'm doing my part, guys. I'm catching up.
I want an animated DC animated film of this, updated for today.
Sure.
Now I will say it's not perfect. There were some things that were still problematic, but they are a product of their time. Yep. There is literally. They run into some Native Americans, some indigenous people, and they refer to them as red face, and the indigenous people refer to them as, pale face stranger, I come in peace, like very stereotype driven stuff. But with that in mind, if you can digest that hard pill to swallow, the indigenous person who is talking to them about the injustice perpetrated by the American government on Native American peoples who were, forced out of their homes and put on reservations.
It's a
Trail
little
of Tears.
Right. It's a little Dances with Wolves-esque.
Yeah, it's problematic.
They're a little white saviory, but
and it is very white savior. Green Arrow is very much a white savior throughout a lot of it. But again, it's in service of. It was a groundbreaking story for its time, and many aspects of it are still, very. It was ahead of its time, and many aspects of those stories could still work today if they didn't have problematic stereotyping and things of that nature. But I really, really enjoyed it from a applicability to today kind of standpoint. It was really, really, I really loved that arc. Yeah. That's some of his.
That's cool. How did because not every issue that they tackle in every issue has to do with race. So how does the Speedy issue hold up? Did you find
that? I feel like it does hold up. There, we know more about the war on drugs and sort of the history behind it and sort of the injustice behind the war on drugs in particular.
Yep.
But I saw that as a really interesting, in some aspects, a time capsule, and in some aspects, some applicability. That one felt like more of a time capsule, because of how it was talking about drugs and drug culture. But it was how crazy is that they put on the front cover of this issue
heroin.
There's Speedy shooting up, like
Speed.
yeah,
Yeah.
Speed. Like that was wild for the time, wild for
it's
today.
It's kind of wild now. Like
Yeah.
you wouldn't put something like that on a cover today.
No, and part of that's just like cover art has changed, but like it was great. I have to say also, I think I can maybe say that like Neil Adams and Dick Giordano are my favorite comic book artists ever. I think I can just come up and say that.
Dick Giordano especially does not get the love that he should. I mean, he does in certain circles, but he's not. But it's not like I feel like he's not so known like Neil Adams.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, Neil Adams I feel like is really well known. Throughout the. Beloved by many comic book fans, and so it's not like it's not a hot take to say that he's like the greatest ever. But I really love, and I read a lot of these on DC Universe.
Mm-hmm.
So you can
cool. I didn't
can
even think
download
about doing
these.
that.
Yeah. They've got all the classic stuff there. I wish they had, or at least I didn't see them broken up by storyline. They just had the individual issues. So I went and found an article that laid out and said, Hard Traveling Heroes is Green Lantern number 77 through 89 or whatever it is, and I downloaded them individually. I wish they had them as like a trade, digitally, so that you can just get a whole story arc. But anyway, if you want to do that, I'll put a link in the show notes to the article I used if anybody's interested in that. But what was one that you read? What was a story that you read and enjoyed?
I went with it's funny. I went with a book that he doesn't get a lot of credit for writing because he did it literally once in his career, but it was the start of his relationship with Neil Adams. And so I was like, oh, I should try this. And it was X-Men issue 865.
Ooh, what year is that from? That was the beginning of his relationship with Neil.
This was pre Chris Claremont. So post Stan Lee, pre Claremont, and before he went to DC, before they both went to DC, because Neil Adams was on X-Men for a while, but Denny O'Neil was on there for like literally one issue, and there's a lot happening. But what I found so interesting about it is how he's really not suited to the Marvel style.
Interesting,
because the Marvel style, and particularly X-Men, is very angsty. That's it's like I'm angry and I have emotions, and it's very soap opera. And this is before Chris Claremont really made comics a soap opera, mind you. Chris Claremont is actually another one that you should put on that Mount Rushmore.
That's true.
Comic book creators.
Yeah. One of the greats.
One of the greats. And so I read it, and it's like the original team. It's Cyclops and Marvel Girl and Beast and Iceman and all that, and it's Polaris and Havoc, and they're like, the aliens are attacking and stuff, but everyone is so angry about it. In the first couple of issues, it's kind of hilarious where Polaris and Havoc ask the original team to come back, and they're like, we were busy in the city, and they're like, I know, but this is important, and they're like, is it as important as how we feel right now? And then they literally start to fight about it,
oh my God,
by the bottom of the second page, and then Havoc's like, we don't have time for this, and then everyone is just like, man, I'm upset. But there's that adult natured side of Marvel that Denny O'Neil did a good job at writing for us. This is one panel from just Angel putting on his costume. I want to read you what he's thinking.
Sure.
It's just one panel. He says, every time I put on these duds, I've got to wonder if I'll be buried in them. Which is no way for Hero to think, much less an Angel. Like that. I was like, wow, my God, that's dark. That's
heavy.
That is heavy. And so it was a fun issue. It actually, I didn't have a lot of context for previous stuff, but Professor X was apparently dead, and he came back in this issue, and everyone was like, oh my God, Professor X, you're alive again and stuff. But so I would say the issue was okay in the grand scheme, because he really wasn't suited for this style. It's just, there was so much. It was almost like watching an anime where everyone's emotions are at 11 all the time, and they're like, I'm crying real tears right now, and it was kind of like that. And I was like, by the time it was over, I was like, whew, that was a lot of emotion.
Yeah,
it was, and not that his comics didn't have that in at DC, but they were a little bit more they were not mellow necessarily, but they were like even keeled, I guess. A little more even paced.
They were definitely energetic stories still, and he has a very energetic, high energy storytelling style. But I know what you mean. Not angsty. Yeah. Not teen angst like you get with the X-Men.
That's right. This was angst. And this was, like I said, pre-Claremont. So this was just kind of the Marvel style at the time.
Yeah,
and so, like, feelings. Everyone has feelings. And so I enjoyed reading it, but when it was done, I was like, whew.
I went on a journey. I'm exhausted.
Yeah, what a journey I went on into space with aliens and... Yeah, it was all over. So I read that, which was exciting.
Nice.
But I also read those Ra's al Ghul issues. Because Ra's al Ghul is my favorite Batman villain, so I couldn't pass up the opportunity to.
I know this about you.
To read up some issues. So, frankly,
had you read them before, or was this your first time reading those, or those original issues?
I have read them before. I have the Batman Tales of the Demon book. It's like all Denny O'Neil stories from Ra's, and I have some illustrated Neil Adams stuff.
Nice.
So that that went in. But I went off book, which is relevant to this, and I watched a Denny O'Neil script in action. Because Batman the Animated Series, he wrote the Demon's Quest. He wrote the teleplay for it, which I've actually got a poster, a Mondo poster of those episodes hanging in my room. It's done in like I'll send you a picture of it so you can put it in the show notes, but it's done in like the style of Stuart, what's his name? Stuart, the poster guy. Indiana Jones, Star Wars.
Bruce Struzan.
Yeah, Bruce Struzan. It's done in that style, so it looks like an Indiana Jones poster.
That's cool.
But it's Batman. I'll send it to you so you can put it in the
Please do, yes.
show notes. But Denny O'Neil's name is just on my wall all the time.
Love that.
Yeah. So story by Denny O'Neil, and then the teleplay was by Len Wein, another important.
Oh yeah,
another important creator of Wolverine, another important comic creator. But anyway, freaking love Ra's al Ghul, and I love. There's something so macho about Batman's dealings with Ra's al Ghul, and like they're just like, I gotta take off my shirt and fight you,
right?
So funny, and it looks like Batman's wearing a sweater, but he's not. He's just really hairy. So what did you think? What did you think of those issues?
Loved, and I figured I would, but yeah, this was the first time I'd actually read that original, Demon Saga. It was similar to Hard Traveling Heroes, where I knew the beats and I knew the story, and I'd seen that story told in other, retold in other media since, but never actually had watched the original. Like, this is the origination of the Lazarus Pit. This is like where all this stuff comes from. And it's funny when you know this. Maybe tell me if you feel similarly when you know these stories and you read the origination of it for the first time. It's like, wow, it's just like matter of fact and straightforward. Like that's it. There's that's Ra's and that's Talia and there's the Lazarus Pit, and like, wow, it's just somebody got to experience this for the first time. I feel like I know that Darth Vader is Luke's father, and I'm like, okay, like I'm looking at it as a historical document almost, but someone got to experience this and all the thrill and emotion that was supposed to be there for the first time. Like, I'm jealous that someone got to have that experience that I didn't get to have, that I was told the story sort of secondhand.
Wow, that is a great comparison. I hadn't really thought about it that way, but I definitely... my first exposure to Ra's al Ghul was on the animated series, so I guess technically I was introduced to him through Denny O'Neil, technically. But
right,
but like by the time you go back and read that story, you're like, oh wow, the Lazarus Pit is just there. Oh, it's supposed to smell bad. Apparently, no one's ever mentioned that in a story before, but you get it from Denny O'Neil. These things that are like thought out that you don't think about in other forms of media.
It's so true. It's so true. And something that I got from this story more than I got from the Green Lantern story was it was written with it was highly descriptive. Like, he has a highly descriptive style, a very pulp style of storytelling, right? Especially with these Batman issues. Probably because they were earlier. I think they were earlier, right?
They were earlier. Yep.
Yeah. It really, really came through as a very and Batman's a more pulpy character, and that's his thing. I was struck very much by I feel, and maybe I'm not 100% sure if Denny created this sort of distinction or not. Tell me if I'm off track here. But I love how he was very good at writing Batman as the detective, writing Oliver Queen as the Robin Hood. Whereas like when they started, Green Arrow was sort of just a carbon copy of Batman with some.
Sure was. Yep.
This
Rich
is
guy, gadgets,
the same story.
Arrow Cave. Like it's just Batman, but with a Green Arrow motif.
But just shifted a little
motif, bit. Yeah.
Right. But he I don't know if he turned him into, but he wrote him as a Robin Hood. Yeah. I figured that was his work. That was his contribution. Like he turned him into Robin Hood, and he very much wrote Batman as the detective. And
I mean, Batman was a detective before
Detective Comics, right?
That's right. Yeah, right. But he definitely he accentuated that part of Batman.
That's exactly
that had been missing, and he even made him a little bit of a darker character again, which had previously you're talking like Dick Sprang Batman and stuff like that, and it's like that like really chunky. Hey chum, how are you? That kind of Batman. Yeah. What I really like about Denny O'Neil's Batman is that he likes being Batman. It's an adventure to him, but he's still a little tormented. Like it's not so much. He's not like Frank Miller tormented, where like every day is a struggle. But like he still gets his kicks out of dressing up as a costume crime fighter, and he's kind of pleasant to be around still at some points. But he can still be a creature of the night, and and the pulpy detectiveness, like it's basically going back to those original Bob Kane, Bill Finger roots. What Batman actually reminds me of is James Bond.
Yes. His Batman very much has that.
Batman is James Bond. He's suave. He's cool. He's got that like actual like playboy millionaire billionaire like rhythm to him. But it's a lot. But it's also a lot, especially with Ra's al Ghul. It's a lot of world adventuring expedition stuff. It's basically the League of Assassins is basically Spectre. Like it's like this like ultra terrorist organization from around the world, and he's like, I gotta hop on a plane and go to this country and this country and this country, and I gotta dress up like this, and I gotta do this and this and that. Like it's James Bond, which I mean, but James Bond was at the height of his popularity while Denny was writing this.
Yeah, that's right.
It speaks to the malleability of Batman in a lot of ways, that this is an acceptable Batman. It was It's good fun.
Really, really fun. Really, really fun. And I assume that the coloring was redone or
it was
punched up for these the DC Universe versions of these, because the colors are so vibrant and beautiful. But it's still like, I mean, the original art was vibrant and beautiful, and just leaps off the page. Like there is the shading and the coloring, like the contrast is just, there's so many of these panels. I wish I could just, can I just get the original panel without the word balloons and just like frame them? They're beautiful, or use it as a wallpaper for my, my iPad or something. Like there are some amazing like emotion-ridden shots of Batman, like close-ups where you can, even if this is like so cliche, but even if there wasn't a word balloon or a thought bubble, I would still know what he was saying or thinking, right? The emotion is conveyed in the art without there being any words.
That's the great, Dick Giordano, but also Neil Adams.
Adams,
just, and Neil Adams is a little full of himself sometimes, but he's like he said, he always used to say like, I draw superheroes like if they existed in the real world, right? They weren't
he did.
They weren't like the Wayne Boring Superman that was like a block of putty. Like nobody looks like that, but they're like lean athletes. That's what he drew. And it's obvious, like, their texture of their costumes looks like they're like painted on, or spandex or whatever. But I think that style plays so elegantly with Denny's style. Makes a huge difference.
Such a great partnership. Such a great partnership. Amazing work. I had ambitions of reading more. I actually really wanted to read Joker's Five-Way Revenge, Batman number 251, which is a very, very famous cover, very famous story. But I've never actually read it.
I have that original issue signed by Neil Adams.
I thought you had that. Yeah. Did you get that signed when we met Neil Adams together, or was that another time?
Yes. No.
Yeah.
I don't remember.
Okay.
I don't remember. To be totally honest, but
no, that's totally fair.
Yeah. Joker's Five-Way Revenge is great. Talking about reinventing characters. We're talking about Green Arrow this whole time, and Green Lantern and Batman. But he like reinvents the Joker. He makes him scary. He, like this was Joker was scary. Then he was a guy that would like squirt mustard on your shirt and run away laughing.
Right.
And then, jokes are funny. And then but he made him like a psychopath again. Like in a way that still is funny, still is not funny, but but it's definitely. I would say classic Joker, classic era Joker, with the one people really think of before like sociopath, psychopath, type of like Heath Ledger-ish Joker.
Yes,
Jack Nicholson. Jack Nicholson's Joker is Denny O'Neil's Joker.
That's right.
Right. That's pretty much it. I actually read one of Denny O'Neil's last stories ever. It might actually be his last story ever. Was in the 80th anniversary issue of the Joker, and he did a story in which like Joker like is set in the time of which he's writing or editing Batman comics, where Joker has like friends in the UN because he was an ambassador that one time. That's you remember. Dumb. But he's like, yeah, I've got friends in the UN. And he's like, I'm kind of in a rut. Like nothing's funny, nothing's whatever. And someone's like, why don't you like? I heard about this group in the UN that's like the Peace Corps, where they like. They're called like the Dove Corps or something like that, where they're like non-violent, no weapons, no nothing, and they go in and solve problems. He's like, yeah, that sounds interesting. I'll do that. And then he just kills everybody at the end. He's like, yeah, well, I'm the Joker.
I mean, what'd you expect?
Right. And I was like, wow, he is terrible. And that's all Denny O'Neil. A lot of that is Denny O'Neil, and I appreciated that, reading something so new.
That's cool. I really should read that. My reading list is getting longer and longer. I had a few things that I didn't get to. I wanted to read his Kryptonite Nevermore run on Superman.
I don't even know about that one.
Superman comics. Yep. It's because I'm just fascinated to see how he would write Superman. But yeah, it's like all Kryptonite on Earth gets destroyed. And this is what moves Clark from being a newspaper reporter to being a TV reporter.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yeah. So that might be what you know it from. But yeah, like all Kryptonite is gone, and there's this whole a whole story. It's got Kurt Swan art, which I really like. Kurt Swan's style of Superman drawing. So like I'm very interested in that. It's got one of the most classic covers. So, yeah, I'm very interested in reading that, and I wanted to get around to that. I also wanted to read his run on The Question.
Yes.
Have you read it?
No, actually. That is something I also wanted to read, and I couldn't get to.
Yeah. But he wrote that in, like, the 80s. He started the book.
Yeah, the character had been around already.
Right, but was it I don't know if it's the first time The Question had his own book, or if it was just the start of a new run on the book, but it is, The Question number 1 through 6, I think.
Kryptonite No More is him breaking out of the Kryptonite chains? I had to look up.
Yes.
Wow, that is
You've
very
seen that
famous.
cover before, right?
That's
Famous.
Very famous.
Yep. So, yeah, for sure. So that's why I wanted to read that one. There's a bunch of things that I had wanted to get to.
Did you, in the Green Lantern Green Arrow run, it was the introduction of Jon Stewart wasn't in there, right? Because Jon Stewart, very end.
Yeah.
I love Jon Stewart. It's a great character.
Me too.
But I like his I'm not wearing a mask thing. I like that bit about he. Why do I have to hide? The whole point is not to hide right now.
Right.
And so
right.
I really that spoke of the now and of the then.
Totally.
So that's good stuff.
Great.
To connect to the beginning, he created Leslie Tompkins too, which is why I said that.
That's right.
Originally.
That's right. Yes. Oh man. I have to say, I also re-listened to his interview on what was then called Fat Man on Batman is now called Fat Man Beyond, Kevin Smith's podcast, one of his 20 podcasts.
Yeah.
But Kevin Smith re-released the whole interview. It was originally put out as a 2-parter like 5 or 6 years ago. He re-released it as one episode. It's like 3 hours long, the whole thing, but it is well worth your time. I'm going to put a link to that in the show notes as well, because it's one of my all-time I remember it being one of my all-time favorite interviews that Kevin Smith ever did. When he started this podcast, he was just interviewing Batman comic book creators, and then eventually like comic book creators in general, and then it sort of pivoted away to be more of a comic book and geek news show, which is what it is today. But at the beginning, which is when he talked to Denny, it was interviewing Batman comic book creators and going through their whole life story. I stand corrected. It's not 3 hours. It's 3 hours and 49 minutes. So it's almost 4 hours. And that's why it was like 2-hour episodes initially. But I cannot stress to you enough, and I know you've listened to it, Tim, but to anybody who hasn't, I really can't stress enough what a fantastic interview this is. He tells like his whole life story and his whole history of working in comics, and he touches on some of the most iconic stories, the ones we've talked about today, and many others that we didn't have time to cover. But man, it is so fantastic. I can't stress enough that it's very much worth your time. So I wanted to throw that in there because I think it's awesome, just awesome.
I will. I haven't gone back to listen to it yet. You sent it to me when he first released it when Denny died, but I have to go back and listen. One last thing that I read, which I didn't know until today, actually, when I read it, that it was adapted by Denny O'Neil, which is ironic because today was announced that Michael Keaton is in talks to return as Bruce Wayne Batman in the Flashpoint movie. I read the adaptation of the '89 Batman movie. The graphic
did he
novel.
write the comic adaptation?
Yeah, Denny O'Neil and art by Jerry Ordway. So two titans of the comic book industry were used on an adaptation of a movie. Like, can you imagine? This is like handing I don't know, like Jim Lee and Jeff Johns an adaptation of make this adaptation. Like, really?
Yeah,
that's
usually
what you're gonna get.
That's usually reserved for sort of second stringers or whatever.
Yeah, no second stringers here. This is the great Denny O'Neil,
the top talent.
Yeah, adapting the movie, and it is a great read because it's based on the script before the movie came out. And so there's some actual changes to the story that you don't see in the film. Like, for instance, he doesn't say "I'm Batman" because the original script has Batman saying "I am the Knight" and then jumping off the building. And so I thought that was it's such a. I mean, I knew it before, but cool to see in action. But what I found so interesting was Denny's and Jerry's analysis of the death of the Joker, because if they're only reading the script, you figure, okay, so Batman ties his leg to a gargoyle and he drops down and falls to his death. Batman murders the Joker in that movie. And so, but here what he does is he there's a great Batman pulls out a batarang but it's not the grappling hook because they hadn't seen the movie yet. Grappling hook, grappling gun was invented for Batman the movie. Batman just used a batarang with a rope attached to it before that, which he has in this comic book. And Vicky Vale's like, "What's that?" And he says, "I suppose the media would label it a batarang."
Oh, that's great.
It's great. So he throws the batarang around Joker's leg and attaches it to the gargoyle. So the helicopter gets stuck and the whole thing happens. But when the gargoyle gets ripped off the building, it compromises the side of the building that Batman and Vicky Vale are hanging on to.
Okay.
So now so then they all start to tumble, all three of them. So Batman has to make the choice between saving the Joker and saving Vicky Vale from plummeting to their death. So he saves Vicky as the Joker falls to his death.
Wow.
So instead of Batman murdering the Joker, he sets it so that they all fall at the same time and Batman has to choose between these two. Because before, it was just to get the Joker to not get on the helicopter.
Right. So he doesn't kill him, but he doesn't have to save him.
That is correct.
You might say.
Yeah. I don't think that this Batman with his non-grappling gun, it's literally like a rope tied to a batarang, I don't think he has the ability to save the Joker.
Sure.
He can only
Sure.
catch the one person, and
That
so
makes sense.
yeah. So, but I see what you're doing there with the
Yeah.
Batman Begins.
That
which
is
featured Ra's al
very
Ghul.
interesting.
So
Which you did.
you know,
Which you did. Yes, that's right. That's right. Yes.
yeah. Well, anyway, so that's
wow.
Denny O'Neil, Frank. Yeah, we read some good. We read some stuff. We read some varied
did.
stuff. We read some similar stuff. It's all good.
I love that. I love that we had some overlap and we had some different stuff. I love that. Yeah. Man, what just a titan of the comic book industry. One of the all-time greats. He will be greatly missed. But man, what a legacy of work, a substantial body of work he leaves behind. And this was great because this was long overdue for me. I'm sure many of our listeners are like, you never read, Hard Traveling Heroes, or you never read. But
yeah, sometimes things just escape you, though.
Sometimes things
life
just
happens.
escape you. Life happens, and I am really glad that I plugged those holes in my comic book education, because what a treat it was to read this stuff. And now that I've gone down this rabbit hole a little bit, and in the summer is sort of when I tend to have some time to catch up on comics and do some more pleasure reading than I normally do, and what with there not being really anywhere to go these days, I look forward to getting to do even more of that and dive into some of those stories that I wasn't able to read in time for today, but hopefully we'll be able to soon. So yeah, R.I.P. He will be greatly missed, but man, how great that we got to have him, and that his work still stands up, and that we get to enjoy it forever.
That's right. That so much of it is still so good to read. So his writing is certainly also of his time. Let's not, I don't want to
definitely,
like the pulpy style. It's wordy. It's comics evolved from where he was, but he made them evolve in the first place, and I think that he deserves a lot of credit. So, Frank, tell people where they can find us, and then we'll shuffle on out of here.
Yeah, you can find us over at beerwithgeeks.com, thoughtbubbleaudio.com. You can rate and review us on Apple Podcasts. You can also find us on Spotify and Stitcher and Google Podcasts and Overcast and everywhere the podcasts are found. Hey, if you have a podcast player and you can't find us, email us at beerwithgeeks@gmail.com, because we want to be there. So if we say you find us wherever you find podcasts, and that's because we make every effort to be everywhere. But if there's an app that you're using and you can't find us in it, email us, let us know. We'll be there. beerwithgeeks@gmail.com, at beerwithgeeks on Twitter, and Thought Bubble Audio is on Patreon if you want to support us and help us. Every little bit counts. So if you want to shoot us even $1 a month is a huge help over at patreon.com/thoughtbubbleaudio, and that will help us to keep the shows going. So thank you so much for your support and for listening, and thank you, Tim.
Oh, thank you, Frank. Actually, well, Frank, before we go, we won't do an episode. We won't do an episode on this, but Joel Schumacher passed away.
I did see that. Yeah.
80 years old, and I'm just reading this post from a guy I follow, a filmmaker that I follow, Ryan Unicomb. He's making the documentary on the George Miller Justice League Mortal movie and
Nice.
things like that, and so. He has this post about Joel Schumacher, and I want to read it because this man, we've been talking about great men who have passed away, and Joel Schumacher may not have made the best Batman movies out there, but he was a very talented filmmaker, and so he deserves a little bit of love. So I just want to read this before we leave. And Ryan says, this needed to be its own post. Joel Schumacher, most of you may know from his work on Batman Forever and Batman and Robin, has passed away. A passionate filmmaker with an incredible filmography on either side of his Bat films, Joel was and has been unfairly dragged over the years, through the mud over the years, especially by our fandom, to whom he has profusely apologized over the decades for his DC outings. Thing is, he made the dark psychological neo-Gothic Batman he was hired to make. We never saw his version, just a muddled recut. When he faced massive pushback from the studio for his follow-up, he decided to lean as far into the kid-friendly approach as possible with Batman and Robin, replicating the nonsensical campiness of the Batman he grew up with, Batman 66. As a kid, I adored Batman and Robin. Even now as an adult, I love Batman forever. You needn't have apologized, Joel. Those toys were bomb and probably have seen those movies more than any other DC property. Over time, we appreciate your vision more and more, but we never got to say thank you properly for it. You'll be sorely missed. Rest well, sir. Thank you so much. So,
well said.
I generally agree. I generally agree with that. I knew that Joel Schumacher had made a darker Batman film. Not as dark as Batman Returns, but he had made a darker Batman film, and the studio was very nervous because of Batman and Robin. And they said no, make it friendlier, and it was basically taken out of his control and recut, reshot a bit, and you got Batman Forever, which is okay. It's fine. It's fine. And then so he leaned into that for Batman and Robin, and spent the rest of his career basically apologizing for it. And so. But he really always wanted to make a dark Batman film. That was his real intention right from he wanted to make a movie with the Scarecrow and Harley Quinn. That was like his thing. Batman 5, The Frightening, and it never came to fruition because of Batman and Robin in the studio that wanted it that way to sell toys. So, I just think it's interesting that the influence that, studios have over creators is sometimes should be noted.
Yeah,
I think.
Hey, I mean it still happens today, right? Look at the Justice League movie we did get. Never mind the George Miller one, but
right, yeah, that's an excellent point. It's a perfect example. So, as you celebrate Denny O'Neil, maybe celebrate Joel Schumacher a little bit.
That's right,
because those movies do mean something to some people.
That's right,
and it's good to appreciate everything even a little bit, even if it's not your version.
Agreed.
So,
hey, listen, let's raise a glass to Denny O'Neil and to Joel Schumacher and to all the great creators who've made the great things that we enjoy, but especially these two, since we remember them in a special way today. And let's raise a glass and let's say cheers.
Cheers.